Hello, everyone. I have a distinct pleasure of having Dr. Roger Jahnke, my mentor and teacher. And one of the things that happens to me, Roger, is when I get up in the morning, first thing I think about is, oh, what am I to do and everything else. I mean, my mind is way ahead of it, anything. But I learned from somebody, maybe you taught me, about some Qigong practice or some practice that can really put me in a gear, proper gear for the day. So, what would that be?
Yeah, beautiful. This is really like it's the portal to all the possibilities that have to do with practice. Because people say, I want to do this, I want the benefits, but I don't have time. And and in some cases, they might say, well, I love this practice when somebody teaches it to me. I'm in a class, but then I can't remember how to do it.
Mhm.
And so this answers all of those questions. Like, how can I get from not doing some kind of practice to doing some kind of practice?
Right.
At what point in the day is the best time for me to have a practice? And what is it that the practice is? And is it really beneficial? And like, what are the benefits? So let's go with this idea. No matter who you are, if you do not have a practice that you do, like a yoga practice or a meditation practice or a qigong or a tai chi practice, because of all the reasons, too busy, can't remember, all that stuff, then there's an answer to the question, how can I get started given my these conflicts? And the answer is, what do you do between the time that you open your eyes in the morning and then actually get out of bed? And really, it's even better to say it with that and to add, what do you do at night before you go to sleep, between the time that you lie down and you're actually in sleep? And those two windows, that morning window and that evening window, or we should say actually that evening window and that morning window, because the evening window is basically wrapping up and letting go of all the complexity in my life, and even seeding, if we can, if you're inclined to, restful sleep or even purposeful dreaming, and then waking up. And before I get busy with all the complexity of my life, what can I bring my attention to? And the answer is some very simple breath practice.
But,
There are not, there are a lot of complex breath
mhm,
practices.
mhm.
That's not what we're talking about. And in my work with all of this, and yours too, I'm sure you've developed a way of describing hundreds of different varieties of breath practice that have to do with slow, fast, holding your breath in, holding your breath out. And I'm only going to be talking about the one kind of breath,
Mhm.
is to basically take the breath you do all the time, which is breathing in and breathing out,
Right.
and extending it to breathing in long, slow, and deep. And so from maybe something like 16 to 20 breaths a minute, you might bring yourself down to 4 breaths a minute. And I'm suggesting that this is something that we would do at night before we go to sleep, and in the morning before we get out of bed. And it becomes a way to realize, have an insight about the fact that you can do a practice, that you do have time, and that simple practices are actually reasonable. And so let's just go with, what is this very simple breath? And I'm going to show with my hands, breathing in, long, slow, deep. And then research has found that if you exhale slowly through your nose, slowly through the nose, being the calculation is can I make my exhalation longer than my inhalation? Now, there are a lot of other little details, like for instance, well, could I increase any kind of benefit by breathing out through my mouth? And we're not going to talk about that right now, although
Right.
there's plenty big, long lecture about that if we want it. So let's do it again. Breath in. Very slowly out through our nose. There are even some ways to be able to modify how the breath is coming out, and we're not going to talk about that right now. It's just breathing in slowly and breathing out slowly. Now, in addition to that, what am I doing with my hands? Well, I can do all kinds of things with my hands, but when I'm going to sleep and when I'm waking up, I'm basically going to put one hand on my heart and I'm going to put the other hand on my belly button. And so then I'm going to tell myself a story about how there's some meaning for that. And if you want to go to yoga chakras, that would be a story you could tell about where you're placing your hands. If you wanted to go to the Chinese, what they call elixir fields, that would be a logic. But for right now, we just want to know something simple that we can do that's a practice that's not complex, that we can do every day with hardly any effort and hardly any wasted time. So here we go now, breathe in. Now, just as slowly as you can, breathe out. Now, if we do this 2 more times, you will actually start, most people will start to feel some kind of change internally. So let's just keep going 2 more times. Long, slow, deep breath in. Exhale slowly, longer, slower, deep breath out. You can imagine as you're doing this that you would want to lengthen your spine, lift your head as far from your pelvis as possible. One more deep, slow, relaxed breath. Exhale very slowly, very slowly. Now, breathe normally if you wish, but keep your attention focused inward and think to yourself, what am I feeling? And where in my body do I feel it? If you don't do these kinds of things, you might think yourself, I don't really feel much. If you're someone who does yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, you've been doing it for quite a while, 3 deep, slow, relaxed breaths will cause a palpable shift in your functional self. So now imagine, before you go to sleep, you create a palpable shift in your functional self for a night of rest. On waking, doing this as many times as you want to. 3 is a good start, but 5 would be even more powerful.
Right.
Notice what you're feeling. As you launch your way into the day, you launch your way into sleep with purpose and intent. You launch your way into the day. And the main thing, we'll just give the tiniest little bit of benefit. When you slow your breath down and when you lengthen your exhalation, it causes the autonomic nervous system to spontaneously shift into a greater focus or greater, shall we say, functional presence of the vagal system or the, shall we say, the parasympathetic system. When you do that, it triggers the release of a whole array of internal chemicals that we could call the medicine within.
Mhm.
And the names of these neurotransmitters are, we won't go into it for right now, but one of these days we'll have another conversation where we can actually talk about, well, what are the actual physiological benefits of these certain breath practices? It is amazing. But
Right.
for right now, the question was, what's one practice? What do I do? It's easy, accessible, no cost, and it's a way to prove to yourself that you can carve out time to do a self-care practice?
Well, Roger, it's fascinating partly because when I think about it, somebody else was managing me while I was asleep. I don't know what the heck I was breathing, what exactly was my breath pattern. I don't know that until until I have trouble, I have snoring or I have some other kind of stuff going on during the night. But when I get up, supposing I have had a sleep, when I get up in my consciousness, now I'm taking a conscious step. Like we just decided that this is how consciously you're going to handle the breath. So this is the conscious handling of the breath. And thank you very much. This is a pearl. This is a nugget, really a big nugget for people to
Mm.
follow.
Yeah,
Try
well,
this out. All those people watching, try this out and write comments. It's going to be fascinating to hear from you. Thank you
yeah,
very
we'll
much,
read the
Roger.
comments. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Roger, very much.